Today, I will teach you 50 advanced English phrases that you must know when you are dining out at an English-speaking restaurant, especially here in the United States. You want to feel confident in your English, you want to feel friendly, and you're past the phrases that your textbook has taught you. So let's learn some more advanced phrases for the restaurant. If you want this list of phrases, make sure you use the PDF link down below to download a free PDF with all 50 phrases. Now, let's get started. These first phrases are perfect for when you just get to the restaurant. Now, in the United States, it's very common at casual and very fancy restaurants to walk up to the person we call the host or the hostess. The host would be if it's a male, the hostess would be a female. And they are going to help you get a table in the restaurant. Let's talk about some phrases that will be useful here. The first phrase you might already know. Can we get a table for two? Or if there's 4 people that you're going to the restaurant, you say, can we get a table for 4? Whatever number of people you have. And a common question they might ask you, especially if you're going to a more fancy, upscale, expensive restaurant is, do you have a reservation? Or here in the United States, if you're going to dinner with many people at a restaurant, it's really polite to call ahead and tell them, we have 8, 9, 10, or even more people that are going to be coming to the restaurant, just so that they can prepare a table that's big enough for you. If you have made a reservation or you've made an appointment to come to that restaurant with your group of people, they will either ask you, what is the name? That means what name did you put the reservation or the appointment under? Or they will say, what's it under? Sometimes you'll give your first name or sometimes you'll give your last name depending on what you told them when you called the restaurant. And if the restaurant is very busy, they might say, do you want to put your name on the list? That means the waiting list, because there's so many people already eating in the restaurant that you'll have to wait until a table of people leaves and then your party of people can sit down at the restaurant. So they'll just ask you, do you want to put your name on the list? One thing that's super common when there is a wait list at a restaurant is they'll say the wait time is 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Or if it's a really busy restaurant, they'll say the wait time is 2 hours. And in that case, I would say, we're going to go somewhere else. But some people don't mind waiting, I guess, if the food is really good. So you'll want to make sure to ask what the wait time is if you're at a very busy restaurant. That would be the phrase to use here. Now, if you're lucky and the restaurant isn't very busy, they'll say, right this way, after you tell them how many people you have or your reservation name. That means they want you to follow them to the table that you'll be sitting at in the restaurant. So typically the host or the hostess will be carrying menus and your party of people will be following them to the table. They'll say, right this way. Remember, it's really important to take the phrases that I'm teaching you in today's English lesson and actually go use them when you're speaking English in a restaurant. And I'm very excited to show you how you can practice more English online with your peers and native speaking English teachers as well. I had so much fun being in a group lesson on Cambly recently, and I was actually able to teach some of the phrases that I'm teaching you in today's video when I was talking about restaurants with the other students in the class. I'm proud to say that today's video is sponsored by Cambly. And the awesome part about taking group lessons on Cambly is you get to meet people from other countries. In the group lesson that I was in, there was a person from Brazil, there was a person from Japan, and the teacher was originally from South Africa. Check out this clip from my group lesson where we were talking about some funny cultural differences between restaurant behavior in each of our countries.
Because I don't know, is it common, how do you get the attention of a waiter or waitress in America?
It's considered kind of rude to put your hand up. I mean, you can give a little wave, but it gets a little bit obnoxious to be like, excuse me. But usually just a quick, excuse me.
Yeah, in Brazil we do hey, can somebody serve?
No, I feel like that's not the thing here.
So that's the beautiful thing with Asia. You literally shout.
Yeah.
Done. So in Chinese, you would say like "fu yan," which means waiter or waitress. And you literally shout it. Like, you don't like, you're not like, "fu yan." No, you shout the top of your lungs, and they're like, okay, I come. Like, it's common ground. You have to shout to get service. If you don't, they'll never come to your table, because for them to like disturb you when you're eating is highly disrespectful. So they will never come to your table and be like, "Oh, how's the food? Do you want anything?" No.
Oh yeah, when I was a waitress when I was in college, and you'd always have to check in. You'd say, "Oh, how was your first bite? Could I get you anything else to drink? Would you like me to top off your beverage?" Like, it's constant check-in, and people like that here.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also like in the state, someone is in charge of your table, right? But in Asia, the waitress is not in charge of any table. Like, they're just in charge of the restaurant. So
Well, there's no tipping there, right?
no,
Yeah.
that's why like no one's in charge of a certain table. So you have to shout out if you want the waitress to come. So like in Japan too, we like literally shout out "sumimasen," like say "excuse me," so that they would come to your table.
Yeah.
I think that it's
So good.
different in Brazil and in the United States. That in the United States, you give your credit card to the waitress and they take it in there. In Brazil, that doesn't happen at all.
I heard people say that before.
we put our credit card and we see if the value is the same, and when we put our password, so it's totally different. So the first time that I went to the States with some friends, they're like, where they're taking our cards.
Yeah.
I was like, no, that's normal, that's okay. They're like, what's happening?
As you can see, the group lessons on Cambly will help you practice your English in a really natural and fun environment. I was so thrilled when Cambly chose me to be a part of their test and their launch of their English group lesson platform. Right now, if you're interested in trying out group lessons on Cambly, you can use my code KaylaGroups for an exclusive discount that will only be valid for 1 week, so make sure you hurry up and go sign up for those group lessons right away. I was really impressed by the Cambly English learning platform in general, so if you also wanted to sign up for some one-on-one lessons, my code is good for a discount there as well. And remember, Cambly uses high-quality native English-speaking teachers, so you can use all of the phrases that I teach you in these English lessons in your lessons on Cambly. Thanks again to Cambly for sponsoring this English video. You guys can use the link in the description of this video to check out Cambly. Now, let's get back to learning some more restaurant English phrases. So now that you've been seated or you have your table at the restaurant, and typically I'm talking about less fancy restaurants, but you could probably use most of these phrases no matter where you eat here in the United States. You'll be asked these questions and you'll need to know these phrases for ordering your drinks and your food. I'm not sure if this is very specific to the United States, but some people have a preference if they like the Coke, the Coca-Cola products, or the Pepsi products. And most of the time in the United States, Coke is more popular, but Pepsi is pretty popular as well. So you'll say, "Hey, could I get a Diet Coke to drink, please?" And they'll say, "We actually have Pepsi products." Now, if you want to know before you start to order which one they have, you could say, "Do you have Coke or Pepsi products?" And my mom is a Coke drinker, so she'll often ask this question when we sit down at a restaurant. Usually when you order something, they'll say, "Is Pepsi actually okay? We have Pepsi here." And for some people, it's actually not okay because they don't like Pepsi, they like Coke. So if you're a soda pop drinker, this is an important question, but if not, let's move on to the next questions you'll need to know when ordering food. You may be familiar with the term starter or appetizer, which is just a small sample of food before you order your main meal. So oftentimes the waiter or the waitress at a restaurant will say anything to start. This means, would you like an appetizer before you order your main dish? Or sometimes people will even order salads before they eat their main meal. If you're at a very fancy restaurant, this is definitely more common to order multiple courses in the meal and to start out with a salad. Now, you definitely know at a restaurant, usually the waiter or the waitress brings you your drinks and then they say, "Are you ready to order?" Or a common phrase that is used here is they say, "Do you need a minute?" This means, do you need a minute to decide your order, or are you ready to order? And you can say, "Yes, we need a minute," or you could say, "Nope, we're ready to order." There are two really common questions that the waiter or the waitress will ask you when you are ready to order. They'll say, "What can I get for you?" That's probably the most common way to ask it, and it's the most formal. But a lot of times, people will say, "What'll it be?" What'll it be? This phrase means, what will your order be? But it's just said really quickly like this, and I would say it's very common. So think of this next time you're at an English-speaking restaurant, people will say, "What'll it be?" That means, what will your order be? If you decide that you want to order something that is going to be eaten by everyone at the table, for instance, a lot of Italian restaurants in the United States, you can order breadsticks. You could say, "We're going to get an order of breadsticks for the table." That means for everyone to share. The phrase "for the table" means that everyone will be eating this dish, whoever wants to eat it. A common question that's asked here if you're dining in the middle of the day is, do you want the lunch portion? During lunchtime in the United States, it is common for restaurants to offer a smaller dish of size because people usually don't eat as much food for lunch, maybe because they're in a hurry or they're just not as hungry. So usually the lunch portion stops around 4 o'clock and then you can't order it anymore, which if you want a smaller dish, it's kind of inconvenient for dinner because you have to get such a big serving size. Of course, Americans are known for having huge portions of food or a lot of food at once, but it's nice at lunchtime they'll say, "Do you want the lunch portion?" That means a smaller size of the food. Many times in the United States, if you order a hamburger, for instance, it comes with certain sauces. Or if you order a salad, it comes with a sauce, which is called a dressing. And a lot of times, people don't like the restaurant to put that on for them. So the waiter or the waitress will ask in advance, "Do you want that on the side?" So you could say, "I'm going to get a salad with ranch dressing." Ranch dressing is so popular in the United States, and I know many different parts of the world do not have this sort of sauce that they put on their salads. I personally am a ranch dressing fan, but I will say, "And can I have ranch dressing on the side?" Or if I don't order it on the side, waiters or waitresses will often say, "Would you like that on the side?" And I will say, yes, I would. And they'll just bring you out a little cup on the side of your dish so you can add it yourself. One of my husband and I's favorite things to do is to go get Indian food. It's kind of adventurous for us because our families didn't grow up eating Indian dishes or dishes with curry at all. So I feel like when we go to an Indian restaurant, they know we might not be super familiar with the food, and they'll say, "Is spicy okay?" or "Is it okay if it's spicy?" So this is a common question in English as well. And you might say, "How spicy is it?" Or you can say, "Could I get it on the mild side?" Which would mean add less spice, please. So it's a common question. If a dish is spicy and the waiter or waitress is maybe questioning whether or not you will know that, they'll say, "Is it okay if that's spicy?" When you are ordering your food at a restaurant, there are some common phrases as well that you can use to start out your order. You can say, I'll go with the salad," or "I'll go with the cheeseburger," "I'll go with the spaghetti." Whatever it is, that means I'll go with this as my choice. And this is not a rude phrase to use at all, as long as you say "please" at the end of it. A really common way to order as well in the United States, more casually, is to say, "Can I get the cheeseburger? Can I get the pasta, please?" That's just a really common phrase that we use, especially if you're at a more casual restaurant. "Can I get?" Now, the formal phrase that your textbook probably taught you to use in a restaurant is to say, "Do you recommend?" So you could say, "Do you recommend the fish?" Now, the waiter or waitress will give you their honest suggestion, or you could say, "How is the fish?" And you're just kind of asking if it's fresh, if it tastes good, if a lot of people order it. And personally, when I was a waitress, and yes, I was a waitress in college, I worked at a restaurant that was kind of Tex-Mex food, which isn't traditional Mexican, but it's more Americanized, I would say. And people would ask me, do you like this? Do you recommend this? And as a waitress, I hated when people asked that because I think everybody has personal taste. Personally, I might not like something that someone else orders, but I want to tell them not to order that because their taste might be completely different. So this is all besides the point of this English phrase, but I'm just saying you might not want to ask this. Just go with what you think looks good on the menu. Another question that I commonly ask when I go to a restaurant to eat is if I'm not sure by just looking at the menu, I'll say, does that come with a side? A side dish at a restaurant would be things like a side of vegetables, a side of French fries. Sometimes the side is just a small salad, something that comes beside the meal. So you could say, does that come with a side? And sometimes at restaurants, they'll say, yeah, it comes with French fries. French fries has to be the most common side dish in the United States at restaurants. And I don't always like to eat French fries because, of course, they're not super healthy. So I'll say, could I substitute a salad or could I substitute a potato or a vegetable? And if you can, they'll say there might be an additional charge. That's fine. Or they'll say there are no substitutions. That means none of the menu items can be changed at the restaurant, even if you request it. And this is not very common at casual restaurants in the United States. They will usually do their best to make the customer happy and to accommodate your needs. But at very fancy and very expensive restaurants, there are often no substitutions because the chef wants everything to be perfect and they want it to be made to their standards. So they don't want people to substitute ingredients or even sides. Some really important phrases for ordering are to go light on or to go easy on. This means that you want less of a certain ingredient. For instance, you could say, could they go light on the onion? That means you don't like a lot of onion, just a little bit of onion. Or this phrase means the exact same thing. You can say, can you go easy on the onion? That means, can you give me less onion in this dish because I don't like too much. Now, if you want more onion, you could say, could they add extra onion? Or you could say, can they go heavy on the onion? So just remember that going light means less and going heavy means more. Now, I'm definitely going to use hamburgers and cheeseburgers as the example here because it's probably one of the most common American foods. But if you want to request certain ingredients or certain things are not put on your hamburger or your cheeseburger, you could say, can I get no mustard, no pickles, no ketchup, whatever it is. But if you actually want your dish to be pretty plain, you're going to ask to remove most of the things. It might be easier just to say, could I get a cheeseburger with ketchup only? That way you don't have to list all the things that you don't want and you just say the only thing that you do want. So ketchup only, please. And this is a really common way to order. You can say, I want this with this only. And if you're ordering meat in a restaurant, it is essential that you know how to ask how much you want it cooked. So you could say, I want a steak rare. That means barely cooked at all. The inside is going to be very pink. Or you can ask for a steak medium. Now, a lot of restaurants, you could say medium rare, which just means a little bit more than rare. Or you could say medium well, which means I want it cooked a lot. And if you like your steak or your meat almost burnt, you could say I like it well done, which I wouldn't recommend. Of course, it's very subjective in a restaurant how much they'll cook your steak, even if you ask for it medium. Sometimes it might not be cooked enough to your standard, and a lot of times you can send back a dish in the United States and they'll cook it more for you if that's what you need. When you're all done ordering, make sure you listen for when your waiter or your waitress says, I'll take your menus. They always take them off your table so that you can enjoy your meal with a clear table. Now that we've talked about getting to the restaurant and ordering your food, let's talk about some phrases that will be useful to know when you are waiting for your food. When we have drank our beverage at a restaurant, we might ask for a refill. That means we're asking for the waiter or the waitress to fill up our drink again. And the waiter or waitress might just ask you, would you like a refill? It's also very common if you are drinking an alcoholic beverage for the waiter or the waitress to say, would you like another round? That means everybody who just drank their drink, they will get it refilled again. And of course, that's going to cost more money. But here in the United States, if you just order water or soda, refills are of course free. But for alcohol, they'll say another round. That means would you like to pay for another drink? And a fun phrase you can use if you want to pay for somebody's drink that time is you can say, I'll get this round. That means everybody who's sitting around the table, I'll pay for your drink this time. When a waiter or waitress brings something, they'll just simply say most of the time, enjoy. That means enjoy what I just brought you. But it's so common to say this as a waiter or waitress when you work in a restaurant. After you wait for the food will come out, the waiter or waitress will give it to you. And a very common phrase that you might have not heard before is they'll say, I'll come back to check on your first bite. I think this is such a funny phrase. It means I'm not going to, ask you how the food is right now because you haven't eaten it. But once I leave, I'll come back again after I've seen that you've had a few bites. Because of course, they want to make sure that you are getting some good food because in the United States, waiters and waitresses, they need to earn their tip at a restaurant, which means they earn the money that you pay them in addition to the money that you pay for your food. Once the waiter or the waitress comes back to your table, they'll usually ask you, is everything tasting good? Or they'll say, is everything tasting all right? Or they'll say, is everything tasting okay? Of course, all of these phrases mean the exact same thing. And another way that a waiter or waitress makes sure that they take care of their customers is they'll say, can I top off your drink? That means your drink is running low, so I'm going to add some more while I'm at your table while I'm serving you. And this phrase is especially common when you're drinking water. They'll say, would you like me to top off your water? Which means they'll pour it out of a pitcher instead of taking your cup away from the table and taking it back. So to top off just means to give you some more, even though you haven't drank the whole thing yet. And of course, they want you to order some more food when you're at a restaurant and they'll say, did you save room for dessert? This means, would you like to order a dessert after your meal or are you too full? After you have eaten at a restaurant in the United States, it's time to pay for the food. Let's talk about some phrases that will help you when you're paying in a restaurant. So there are 3 phrases that all mean the same thing. You can say, can we get the bill? Can we get the check? Or can we get the ticket? The ticket, I think, would be less formal and more at a casual restaurant. I wouldn't use that phrase at a very formal or fancy restaurant. But all 3 of these phrases, can I get the bill, check, or ticket? They all mean the same thing. I need to pay for my meal. I'm ready to pay. And if you're eating with a friend and you each need to pay for your own food, of course, you'll have to say, could we get separate checks, please? That means you need to give a check for my food and a check for my friend's food. If you are feeling very generous, you'll want to say, this is all together. Or you could say, I've got it. This means I don't want you to separate the check. Or if you're expected to pay, you'll let the waiter know, this is all together, don't separate the check. Because that could be awkward if you had already offered to pay for the meal and they brought your friend a check. When you're eating at a restaurant, if there was an error that the restaurant made, or they made a mistake on your food, or they brought you something that wasn't cooked very well, they might do what we call comping your food. And comping is short for giving complimentary food or free food. So oftentimes they'll give you a discount or they'll just take an item off your check at a restaurant because they made a mistake, so they don't want you to think negatively of the restaurant, so they'll give you something for free. If you're at a very casual restaurant and maybe you go up to a register to pay, you'll have to say, what does that come to? Or what does that come out to? That means what is the total amount that I have to pay? And these 2 phrases are very common in the United States, but they're not commonly taught to English learners, so I want to bring them to your attention. What does that come to means what is the price of this? And if you're looking at the check with your friend, they might make the joke, what's the damage? That means how much food did we eat and what was the charges? You're acting like it's going to damage your bank account to pay for the meal. It's just a really common silly joke that we make when we get the check at a restaurant. What's the damage? This would be like a dad joke, which means it's something that's very corny and overused in English. If you are paying for the entire meal at a restaurant, you can tell your friend, it's my treat. And oftentimes after we say, it's my treat, we'll say, don't worry about it, which means don't feel guilty that I'm paying. I want to be generous today. And of course, you always need to tip the waiter or the waitress. In the United States, of course, 15% of the total bill would be considered a standard tip, but actually it's really common in the United States to tip 20, even 25% if you got decent service at a restaurant. And if you got really, really good service from your waiter or waitress, which means they just were very kind, very friendly, they brought your food out very quickly, you might even tip 30% of the bill. And another word for a tip is gratuity. You can tell someone, I would like to add gratuity to my bill if they're adding the number themselves. But oftentimes in the United States, when you dine out at a restaurant, you get the receipt that you write the amount of tip or gratuity that you want to give. 2 phrases that you'll need to know when you're leaving the restaurant if you want to bring food with you is you could say, can I get a to-go box? This is the most common way to ask this question. A really kind of old-fashioned way, which is kind of funny to use, is to say, could I get a doggy bag? This means, can I bring this food home? And it's kind of joking like I'm going to bring the food home for my dog, but it's really for yourself to bring home. It's an old phrase, and I think it's worth knowing, but it's not commonly used anymore. Congratulations on studying all 50 of the phrases in this lesson. I hope that you guys feel confident that you are going to be polite and you are going to understand the waiter or waitress at any English-speaking restaurant, especially one here in the United States. My name's Kayla. You guys can sign up for my English course by going to englishwithkayla.com. And of course, I'll leave some videos on screen that are all about restaurant English that will help you out when speaking English in the United States. I'll see you guys in the next lesson. Goodbye!